Hey, Paul, during the bubble in your playoff series against the Calgary Flames, after the Matthew Tkachuk hit on Scheifele, that's close to as heated as I've ever seen you in the media afterwards. Clearly, there was bad blood in that series. How does a series with bad blood like that carry over into an opening night game like the one you'll see tomorrow night?
I don't know if there's the answer to that. It has seemed over the last years that if there was ever an incident and there was some hype about what was going to come next, it was dead quiet. So you never truly know. My feeling is the playoffs are a different kind of animal, and that was a playoff series, and the intensity's high, and then it kind of resets maybe the next year. So we'll see. I mean, both teams that want to win that first game, right? You want to get off to that good start, so that will be priority one.
We'll go next to Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Ken.
Afternoon, Paul. What can you tell us about the status and availability of Nikolaj Ehlers after missing today?
Nikolaj Ehlers is in the COVID protocol. What's the R stand for? Related absence. So I think Kevin just took you through all the different pieces to that. So that's where he is.
Go next to Ted Wyman from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Ted.
Thanks. Hey, Paul. You talked a little bit earlier in camp about this not being a young team anymore, not necessarily a veteran team, but experienced, and it was time for the team to perform. Do you see that as applying to yourself and the coaching staff as well?
Yeah, I'm not young anymore. Turned 54. Oh, you mean be more experienced? Or I thought you were making a comment on how young I look. I hate this Zoom shit. I can't tell if he's asking if it's a joke or he knows my birthday's coming up and he's trying to be funny. I don't know. Okay, fire the question at me one more time. I'll try to close my eyes and picture what you're saying.
All right, not making a comment on your age, Paul. We are the same, by the way. But
there you go.
I was just wondering if you felt that what you said about it being time for the team to perform applies to you and your coaching staff as well.
Yeah, but that wouldn't be any different than any year, right? So the coaching staff's performance and results are a function of what we believe the expectations for our team are. So I like to see us play a certain way. And being a more veteran group, I think the inconsistencies come out of your game. And when you watch our team play, that you have a pretty good idea when you come to the rink what we're going to look like. And most nights we look like that. So I'm looking forward to this year. I've had a more enjoyable experience in these first 2 weeks than camps in recent memory, just because there's more, a little more veteran guys. The guys that you brought into the league now understand what's expected, and they're driving like that in practice. So I'm excited about it.
And we'll go next to Kelly Moore from CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
And Paul, I've got about 10 years on you, so you are.
There you
young.
go. And I wouldn't know because it's Zoom, Kelly,
Yeah.
and you could be 25 years old.
Thank you, Coach. Just knowing how sometimes you can have a animated discussion with the people with the stripes and the whistles. With what we understand this year, there are going to be frequent times where the same individuals are going to be charged in officiating a game. Is that going to change things for you, Paul, in terms of your temperament with those guys?
You know what? Going both ways, I think that everybody will be aware of that. The sense is that because the situation's unusual, the building's empty, I felt maybe more dialogue with the referees. It was easier to talk to the referees in the bubble. And I think that's true because there's not kind of the fan base either home or away to incite by talking to the other coach. So I thought that the relationship from our point of view with the referees was easier in the bubble. And I think that continues on.
We'll go next to Jeff Hamilton from the Free Press. Go ahead, Jeff.
Sorry, guys, just breathing in this young people air. Just curious about.
That's good, though. I like that.
Just curious, Paul, you've mentioned size a couple different times over training camp, and I'm just curious if bringing in bigger bodies, whether it be a forward or just equalizing those defensive groups and some of the veterans you brought in. Are you hoping to play a heavier game? Are you hoping to play kind of a similar game that you had a couple years ago where you're hard to play
I think you play to your strengths. Things have changed a little bit for us. The Central Division in the Western Conference would be heavier, right? To be a little, feels like there's bigger men, feels like, and even if the size isn't different, it feels the style of play is. But so what you want to do is, play to those strengths. So the smaller guys that we have on our team, I'm not in their ear that they got to be running around finishing checks because I want to play a heavier game. We have to play to our strengths. I like the fact that we got a little bigger body. Sometimes those guys are a little bit more durable on that back-to-back idea and in this kind of condensed schedule that we're going to face. So, I mean, you'd always prefer to have you a heavier, bigger, guy, but skill, if not at the cost of skill. So I just felt, and some of it might not be, we were moving bigger in camp, right? We're going into, there was way more contact in this training camp than one we've had in recent. We felt we needed to get them into no exhibition games. They needed to get bumping and get into that feel. And, we didn't have anybody pulling up into the corners. And I'm talking about the small people too. That's part of that age thing. You lose a little bit of that intimidation when the kids first come into the league. They've all been hit a bunch of times. They know what it's like and they're open to it. So yeah, we're bigger, but it may not be by poundage. It'd be maybe by style of play.
We'll go next to Mike McIntyre from the Free Press. Go ahead, Mike.
Hi, Paul. Speaking as a fellow January birthday, I think I can safely say that January produces some of the best humans around.
We now officially have a theme. We've got a theme to this call.
But while we're talking about birthdays and age, there's this perception out there that, the Jets didn't do a whole lot in the offseason. They didn't add a lot of pieces. And maybe in terms of big names, I mean, Paul Stastny, obviously. But when you look at who's going to be in your lineup potentially tomorrow that wasn't in the lineup last year, looking at guys like Stastny, Lewis, Thompson, and Forbert, I think Forbert's the youngest of that group at 28. Those guys have over 2,500 regular season games between them. Just how important when you went into your offseason was it to add that experience, and why?
It was critically important because there are times, and there have been times necessary in the last 4 years where we have played younger players ahead of that experience. And in terms of how we decided, how many, on your fourth line, especially, I think, the year before last, we had Lemieux, Patan at the time, Appleton was young, and Roslovic, and that was our fourth line. And those guys didn't particularly enjoy playing there, but it was a National Hockey League job and it gave them some games, and you're trying to get them some, and you are developing, right? You're somebody would get injured, one of those guys would get a chance. You saw even the last, with Roslovic comes in, plays a little bit, then the next year he's on the fourth line, then the next year he's on the third line. So you're developing those players. And then you get to a point where you make your decisions, and, we think that, Laine, obviously, Connor, Ehlers, those guys fill those top end holes. So you're not really spending as much time trying to give ice time to young guys to build your team. So we've got some pretty important holes filled by youngish players, but we needed a veteran. Now is the time to fill in with those veteran guys. So our changes came in the area that we felt we needed to most, right? We added 3 players that have a big impact on your defensive game. So Trevor is on the wing, but the 2 centermen and the defensemen spend so much time playing down low that they can have a pretty big impact on that. I really, really like our center ice right now. We also have guys like Andrew Kopp that can go into the middle if we needed to. So our center depth is solid. There isn't really anybody in our lineup that we're breaking into the league right now.
Go next to Paul Friesen from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Paul.
Hey, Paul, the backdrop to the start of the season is unlike any other, both what's going on south of the border and globally with the pandemic. And I know you guys are kind of insulated from it and you're our distraction from it. But how does what's going on in the outside world color this season, do you think?
Individually. In every person's opinion or view lens, and they're all different. So we're fortunate to have the opportunity to do our jobs, and I specifically like to do that job. And what I mean by that is I don't have another job where I comment on a lot of other things. You know, I keep my opinions pretty close to the vest, because that's kind of how I believe. That's the way I like to live. So that's why I don't have a Twitter account, right? I'm not engaging in those parts of the world. We all have opinions on it. So I would say that each one of us has an idea, a view lens, and that we would see everything a little bit differently. I'm no different than anybody else. I have opinions, but one of my strongest ones is that if you're going to have an opinion, you get to have an opinion, but if it's going to be a vocal one, you should be pretty darn educated on what you're talking about. I believe that. I guess I will get accused at times in media and that I have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to hockey, but pretty sure that I've devoted my life to understanding it. So that's my view lens.
And time for a couple more. We'll go next to Murat Atesh from The Athletic. Go ahead, Murat.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for doing this. This is our first experience with this COVID protocol, whatever the acronym is.
Yeah, no, you can't ask the question if you don't know the acronym.
CPRA, we're going to make it up.
Nicely done.
Oh, it's my young brain. It's
just a little quicker than mine. I can't even say that word anymore.
I'm just wondering, there's got to be, without giving away what you can't give away, there's got to be a range of options for Nick Ehlers in this situation. And is it even technically possible he plays tomorrow night, or what is the range of possibilities like?
I think him playing tomorrow night is in the range of possibilities. I mean, there's a spectrum of things that causes you to be on the acronym squad, and any one of those may have a different outcome. That was a whole lot of nothing, right?
We'll end off with Sarah Orleski from TSN. Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, there's always a lot of interest in Patrik Laine and seeing out on the ice, and just wondering, heading into the start of the season, what you saw from him in camp and where you take his headspace to be at right now.
He would have had the best camp that he's had here, and in terms of an effort and an engagement. He was wired. Like, his first 2 days of practice would be the hardest I've ever seen him work. And then he was able to continue that on as the practices kind of gotten lighter. So he falls in the category kind of where I put everybody else. I thought we had a good man's training camp. Like we weren't kids out there. We came to work. It was going to be long. It was going to be hard. There wasn't any complaining. There wasn't any. We skated at the end of practice, and we skated every one with the exception of the last two. They all pushed to get better, to drive hard. So he looked, I would say, really good, and really pleased with, that development. I mean, and Nick Ehlers kind of the same way, right? The young guys, Kyle Connor and those guys, came back older and more mature. They've been through a bunch of camps. They're trying to get better. Patty's a really competitive guy, and he wants to score goals above all things. And he's starting to, his experience now is telling him that you gotta push hard in practice, and you gotta push hard in training camp if you want to produce. So he was good, really good camp.